Good morning, hello. Attention please. Yeah, come on. Warm up. Making sure that everyone's awake. Good. Good morning. Hope everyone's had a good weekend and enjoyed your holidays over the Easter break. It's probably been a good break for you. Finally, we get a lecture back for term 2. Before I go on, hang on, that's the wrong title. Sorry. Let me reset. Apologies for that. I had the wrong slide show. So before we continue, the next lot of lectures, how we've been running them in term 1, we've been running them for an hour and 15, and some have gone over time, some have gone a little less than that. Really sort of was dependent upon the content. So we're going to be running lectures for about an hour for this term, and then starting classes at a little bit earlier. So the classes will be about 10:30 through to 12:15. So we haven't quite confirmed that yet, but we will work out the best way forward and schedule the times and send that out. Alright, so today's lecture on non-manual features. One of my favourite topics because it's a very important part of the grammar of Auslan. Before I go on, normally Ben is here interpreting, but unfortunately he's not well. So he's got a sore throat, so you won't be hearing his voice today, and we didn't want to hear a sick voice. So Neil, our manager, has stepped in to fill that gap. So be on your best behaviour. I don't think of him as my manager today. He's here with a different hat on. So, now, I've noticed that this side of the room, to my right, is Certificate 2, and the other side is Certificate 3. Now, moving forward, I'd like to see you mix up and sit in different seats, please, because there may be occasions when you need to share information or discuss things in groups. So, please keep that in mind. Don't be shy. Get involved with the other group. I would like to see you sitting in different places. There may be times when I may want you to talk about, and here's a good example, a couple of minutes talking about what you understand non-manual features to be. Go for it. let's bring it back. Still talking? All good? Everyone's watching you? Okay, so at the start of the lecture you're all using English and now you've started to use Auslan, which is great. Well done Certificate 2 group for persisting to use Auslan whenever you can. So, anyone can get some ideas from you about what non-manual features are? It's a bit like the tone of your voice. Yeah. They support signs. Okay. Any other ideas? Facial expression. Yes. Body language. Yes. Positive and negative signs. Oh, like negation. Okay. Like and don't like. Gesture. Maybe. Others? They can change the meaning of what you're saying. Eye contact. Yeah. Alright. So, let's have a look. So, non-manual features are elements of a sign message involving any part of the body other than the hands. This includes facial expression, and I've got plenty of examples to show you and some videos that we'll look at the end of today's lecture. So they can involve body parts such as your facial expression, eyebrows, more specifically, movements of the eyes, mouth patterns or mouth movements, head movements, body movements, use of the cheeks, shoulder movements, and even the nose. So it's not just mouth patterns. Some people were thinking it could be mouth patterns, but there are a whole range of different non-manual features. And it all depends on the context in which the person is talking about. And I'll show you some more specific examples to help you understand better about what that means. These are not done in isolation, and often if they are done in isolation, it can leave the other person with a bit of uncertainty. So, some examples. When we're talking about eyebrows, when we use the sign for I know something, you can use the eyebrows in particular ways, right? I know if you're sitting down the back, it might be a bit hard for you to see, but I'll show you videos that are a bit that are close up, and you'll be able to see it more easily. You can use your eyebrows in a frown if you're expressing anger, for example. And there are many other types of eyebrow movements. Some, when you get to class, you'll be able to do some of these in activities, okay? Use of the eyes in different ways. You can stare at someone, okay? You can use your eyes in a way that sort of shows a bit of sparkle or life. And yes, I can see you practicing that now, that's good. Eyes widening up if something is happening soon. If something is far away, the eyes tend to narrow. And if someone is confused, the eyes might go in different directions. You'll laugh at these expressions that I'm about to show you. And it is kind of a funny thing to be looking at, but when you really observe how deaf people use facial expressions and non-manual features in real language, it's very interesting. Mouth and lip patterns. There are a number of different ways that you can use your mouth. Grimacing, such as just recently. So if you were to ask someone, when did that happen? And they said, it's just happened. If something gets lost, you lose your direction. If you're taking revenge on someone, you purse your lips. And it really depends on where the person is. And you can even direct that facial expression and the sign towards that person. If you're surprised, your mouth is agape. If there's a party going on, I come along to a party, oh, I'm so surprised. The expression of like affirmation or, oh, right, that's what you mean, okay? Your mouth comes open. If you're vacuuming your house, your mouth goes like this, you're sucking in air. Or if you're relieved, you might be blowing air out of your mouth. If you're running to catch the train and you get in the train and you're relieved, you can blow the air out of your mouth this way. If the person is exaggerating and going on and on and on about what they're saying, you can use your tongue as well. And I can sense that these things amuse you too. Other types of mouth movements, I'm not sure if Certificate 2 have got to this point, but there are specific signs that are used that you'll see, and the lip pattern is very specific to those signs. And those lip patterns and movements are not English based. They don't follow any English words. Some signs do, but some don't. This sign, for example, you never use the English word that could be associated with that sign, such as strange. So that's another example of where mouth patterns are a bit different. This one, something's finished. The English word is more akin to fish. Okay. This one, to have finally done something, or it's been successful, or it's been completed, like you've just passed your exams. The word depends is not used for this sign, for example. Oh, I skipped one. Did I? Did I jump one? Oh, that one. That sign. Sorry, Trish. So there are a number of other examples where the English lip pattern is not used, and it's a different lip pattern. And it will take you some time to work out what those lip patterns are specific to those signs. Head movements. Wow, there are numerous examples of how the head can be moved and used. Obviously negating. Okay. Or it could be used this way. Tilting the head to the left or to the right if you're indicating that it's something is to the left or right. You can push your head backwards. Like if you're talking about gymnastics, you might use your head and move it backwards that way. If you're diving into something, your head comes forward as if you're diving. So yes, your head moves around in lots of different directions. Oh, okay, alright, so just as an interjection, you can use your head to move backwards, but also your whole body can move back a little bit as well. So there's a slight difference in location. So you could be moving backwards like this, or if you're reversing back in a car, you might move back this way. Moving forwards to continue doing something, you move forward. And again, talking about driving in a car, you might move your head left and right if you're driving left and right. So if you're practicing your driving directions, you might move your head around to the left and right. Okay, moving on to the body. The shoulders can be moved upwards, like in a shrug, I don't know. But there are different expressions to just like in the face. So it's not just one movement. Apologies. What I mean is the shoulders and the facial expressions work together to indicate what you mean. Your shoulders can move down if you're sad. So it's very awkward to use the sign just like that. You have to use more facial expression and body movements to indicate it appropriately. Excited, your body tends to move upwards. I wish I could go on holidays now, that would be a good thing. Again, if you're in a car, your body would move from side to side. Okay, moving on to the cheeks and how they are used. Very good idea if you want a facelift, moving your cheeks around can help you exercise your face. So, puffing your cheeks out if you're relieved, sucking them in if you're thin, and a number of other examples. Coming back to the shoulders, again with the body. Some people may have got some sort of injury playing basketball or something like that, and they need to shrug their shoulders forward. Or your shoulders come forward if you're talking about a person, an elderly person. Shoulders can come back if you're talking about backstroke in swimming. You can use your shoulders and head to indicate a person, like if that is an attractive looking person over there. Yeah, how about that person? How about this person? Right? So the shoulders can be used for these things. Use of the nose. Generally, if it's if you're smelling something, but it could be if you're in doubt, the nose gets used a little bit more as well. Okay, so that's very much a summary of what non-manual features include. Your eyes, your shoulders, your cheeks, head, and so forth. Now, some of you sitting down the back end may not have been able to see some of my examples, so I have a video example that shows it much closer. I think I'll turn the lights out for this. Because it just wouldn't make the same meaning. So in order, the person that you're talking to would then have to imagine what you're trying to say. You might have to use a different tone of voice when you're speaking English to get the same meaning across. So it's very important to make sure that you use the signs in the correct context with the right facial expressions. More information can be found in the book that we use, that's my reference, the Trevor Johnson and Schembri book. It's available online as well for further reading. Okay, over to you. Are there any questions? Anything that you have been unsure about? Anything that you'd like to share from your classes? Yes? Yep. I'll copy your signing, so you just sign it. What's this sign? What's this sign? Did it come up in video? I can't remember what the context was. Are you talking about being relieved? I do it like that or that, but you can do it a little bit differently, and that's quite acceptable variation. Yeah. Another question. This sign, it can mean crowded, like if you're in a crowded room. Yep. The shoulders come forward to show that you're in a crowded room. Yep. Good. Maybe there were some signs there that you didn't see. You'd be able to share those in your classes. Any other questions? Yep. Can sign variation vary across age differences? So you're talking about variations in facial expression or non-manual features across ages. So teenagers might use signs differently. Okay, Trisha, what do you think? I think it really depends on the person's upbringing and how they've acquired the language in the first place. If a person has grown up using spoken language, then their development of non-manual features might be slower than a person who's grown up with signing. So the more involvement in the deaf community the person has, the more they have learned how to use manual communication. And if they've grown up with only spoken language, they probably haven't recognised the full range of nuances in non-manual features. Most people have facial expressions that are very common, but then there are other people who display very nuanced amount of non-manual features, and so it really depends. There's a huge variety. Their personality as well will come into play. Yep. Question?
What would happen with your facial expression if somebody frequently had Botox? Make it so harder.
Oh, that's a very good question. Maybe I'll go try it myself, and I'll come back and I'll show you. I really don't know. Oh, Trisha's got an answer for that. Go on. I know one person who had a little bit of treatment across their forehead, and their forehead became very stiff, and they couldn't use their eyebrows in the same way, and they really didn't like it. And they thought, I'm never going to do this again. And it was probably lasted for about 3 months or so. So please, don't go get Botox treatment. Your faces are beautiful the way they are. We want them to stay that way. But they could use their eyes and their cheeks more, but not their eyebrows as much. How interesting is that? So, non-manual features. Very important. Over time, you'll learn to develop them more. Any other questions before we finish up? No? All right, great. So,